SDG number 5. This is a global metric that helps us keep each other accountable. Now, number 5 specifically touches on matters gender, equity, and empowerment of all women and girls. Question is, in the business world, are women disadvantaged, and how can we fill those gaps so that when we are finding solutions, they are tailor-made to address the specific needs of the women depending on the region? Because even within the country, the women in Nairobi are experiencing totally different problems and challenges compared to women, for example, in Western Kenya. So how can we make sure that SDG number 5 comes to life? Focus will be on that right here in Business Today. We'll talk to Zuri Awards, which is dedicated to empowering women MSMEs. At the same time, on today's show, we'll have an interesting conversation later on matters to do with technology, the tech world. We've seen two trends. First of all, we've seen a lot of tech layoffs from a global perspective. Question is, will that issue trickle down to the Kenyan ecosystem? Well, we'll have our very able tech guru within, that is Kelly Boss, who will be analyzing that. And thereafter, we're going to a conversation on matters fintech and the outlook for fintech in the year 2024. I'm Noki Kambo, and welcome to Business Today. We'll begin with the markets. All right, and just like this day, normally we expect my colleague Nyakundi handles the Tuesday shows, but there's been a little bit of changes. So today I'm here and talking about changes. There is a big change happening in the financial world, locally speaking. What am I talking about? NSE. Frank Mwiti, the East Africa markets lead and partner at Ernst & Young, will succeed Geoffrey Odundo as CEO of the Nairobi Securities Exchange, the NSE. Now, Odundo's term, which has lasted 9 years, will lapse on the 1st of March 2024. Before Ernst & Young, Mwiti has previously worked at PwC, Ernst & Young, Partner, Deutsche Bank. We had also he's worked at Africa Capital. Now, Mwiti's term will begin on 2nd of May 2024. In the 2 months in between Odundo's retirement and Mwiti's starting date, the NSE appointed David Wainaina, the NSE's current COO, as the acting CEO. And still talking on this particular change, I want to bring on board Anthony Kiambati, who is actually a trader and is a trader at AIB. And Anthony, I mean, it's a very interesting change if you can get me from that end. This particular change, Mr. Odundo's tenure has been rocked with a lot of challenges. I mean, within the 9 years is when we experienced the issues to do with COVID, and we saw a lot of capital flight. Just looking in hindsight, what were some of the biggest battles that Geoffrey Odundo faced in his tenure?
Okay, thank you so much. I think the CEO joined at a time when the markets were experiencing a lot of downside, especially we heard a bearish trend for the past 10 years, I'd say. 2022 was the worst time for the markets, and this was due to what we were experiencing in the global markets. That's specifically the US market, where we were having one of the longest, or one of the toughest quantitative tightening cycle by the Federal Reserve, and this affected. These had effect in the frontier markets and the emerging and the frontier markets. So what I mean by this is the moment the US Federal Reserve started raising rates, we saw a lot of foreign investors fleeing from markets and heading to more developed markets like the US and the UK, which has caused one of the longest bearish run in our local markets, specifically the equities markets in the Nairobi Securities Exchange.
Anthony, just look that, maybe if I may just interject, you've talked about capital flight, looking at the balance within our stock exchange, which is majorly driven by foreign investors. Has that been a concern for traders, especially that risk of capital flight? And is it one of the issues that Mwiti has to deal with to sort of bring stability in the bourse?
Yeah, definitely. That has been the major issue, because one of the things you need to note is that for the longest time, foreign investors have accounted for over 70% of trading activities in our market. So when you have a situation where foreign investors flee our market, especially fleeing from the top 5 counters, then just basing from the laws of supply and demand, definitely we had to see a bearish run in our market. So that has been a major issue. And as we get a new CEO, one of the expectations that investors have for him is, can he offer sustainable solutions for our market to ensure that our market is not heavily affected by any situation where we see foreign investors fleeing from the developing markets. And coincidentally also, most investors are expecting rate cuts in the US starting in June, which happens to be around the same time when the new CEO is starting his job, that's 2nd of May. So that's a good coincidence for him on his side, because the moment we start seeing rate cuts in the US, then we might expect a revamp in our local markets.
And lastly, before I let you go, there is this effort by the government on matters privatization. And it's one of the issues that the president highlighted that will be a route to reenacting and reinvigorating our markets, listing these private entities and Kenyans to buy ownership. How do you think that would fare on, especially under the new leadership, this issue of privatization?
Okay, one of the forgot to mention is we have had an IPO drought in our markets for the longest time. Actually, if I can remember, the last listing we had was in 2015. That's when they listed the Fahari iRate. So one of the major issues why guys were not listing on the exchange was due to the bearish run. So if the new CEO is able to get back investors in the market and bring the confidence back, and if we can see rate cuts in the US and also see a reversal from a bearish run in the NSE to a bullish run in the NSE, then I think the issue of listing will not be a problem, and the whole plan around government privatization of state-owned enterprises, I think, will be successful the moment we see a reversal in the markets. It's important to note that when NSE 20 share index is at a 20-year low, which is quite bad. So the moment we see a reversal in the markets, the moment investors will be able to see share prices going up, etc., then the whole issue around listings in the NSE will not be an issue. Another thing I think the new CEO needs to work on is the regulations around listing. So the procedures, be it tax, be it the processes, the requirements. I think we did a lot of reviews in the policies around listing. So I think if he's able to work on that, then we're going to have more listings in the market. Yeah.
Very much. Anthony Kiambati is equities and derivatives trader at AIB AXYS Africa, and he says that there is a lot of interest